The SAT math sections. So there are two math sections. There's the no calculator and the calculator. The no calculator section comes first, section 3. It's 20 questions. You have 25 minutes to do it. And the calculator section is next. It's a little longer, 38 questions, and you have 55 minutes to do it. Both of these sections have multiple choice questions and grid-in questions. Those grid-in questions, there are no multiple choice answers to choose from. You just have to come up with your own answer and then fill that answer in on your bubble sheet. I recommend for both sections that you do the grid-in questions first, because if you leave them for last, so they come last in the order of questions, but if you leave them for last and you run out of time, you're forced to either just leave them blank or to try to take a guess on those grid-in questions, and you would be extremely lucky if you got one of those right on a wild guess. If you do those first, get them out of the way, and then happen to run out of time on the multiple choice questions, you have at least a 1 in 4 chance of getting those right on a guess. It's also the case that those multiple choice questions are the final multiple choice questions in the multiple choice section are the most difficult questions on the test usually. So those are the questions that you're least likely to get right anyway. So if you're gonna run out of time or take a guess on anything, it should be those. So the questions are roughly in order of difficulty from the beginning of the multiple choice to the end of it. And then it starts over again on the grid-in questions. So the first few tend to be easy, and then the end of them, they're a little bit more complex, but they usually aren't as difficult as those final multiple choice questions. So the topics that the SAT covers, there is a range, but the SAT definitely prefers a few topics over others. So those are functions and graphing, quadratics, so expanding, factoring, and doing a few other interesting things with them, and systems of equations. And the SAT is good at asking questions on those topics that are pretty in-depth and require some creative thinking, which means that you're likely to get a question, even if it's a familiar topic, that you don't know how to do. And that's okay, that's just part of taking the test. So what you should do in that situation is, number one, don't panic, and just do what you can. If it's an equation, start by simplifying the equation. If it's a quadratic in the expanded form, start by factoring it. If it's a quadratic in the factored form, start by expanding it. If it's a word problem, just start by transcribing that word problem into whatever equations are appropriate. So just take it one step at a time. Usually what happens, you do one step, and then you see, oh, I could take this other step, and then this other step. And then before you know it, you realize the next step that you're gonna take gets you to the answer. So you just find your way one little piece at a time, and that's okay. Also, the SAT is not grading you on your work. So you can find the answer in any way that works for you. So the math class way of doing math is very effective. That's why it's taught. But on the SAT, there are some other options to consider. So you can plug in answer choices into an equation, question equation. You can come up with your own values for variables in an equation if there are variables in the question equation and in the answer choices. You can sometimes just plug in different values of your own into an equation to see how the equation functions, get it to better understand it. So there are lots of different strategies that you can use, and I'll address those in other videos. As far as the two different sections, the one that people have the most trouble with, it seems, is the no calculator section. And I think it's largely because people are really addicted to their calculators. So what I recommend is just try to break that habit outside of your SAT work as well as on this section. So in math class or just in your life, don't always reach for your calculator or the calculator on your phone. Try to do math on pencil and paper as much as you can. So the actual computations that this section will ask you to do are usually not that complicated, though the questions may be complicated. It's usually like single digit multiplication, division, addition, subtraction kind of stuff that you need to do. You know, the worst will be some long division, And even that doesn't come up that frequently. So try to break the calculator habit. On the calculator section, so even though you have a calculator, it's permitted, it doesn't mean that you should use the calculator for every question. You definitely don't need to. So, and a lot of times I think it can slow you down or just kind of get in the way. So you should be accustomed to doing math on pencil and paper. And that applies for this section also. So the calculator is there as a tool. So know how to use that tool, but it doesn't solve every problem. At the same time, it does bring some unique benefits. So for example, like if you're doing a system of equations question and you want to find a point of intersection, you can solve that algebraically, or you can plug it into your calculator and graph it and find the point of intersection that way. Both ways will get you the right answer. And then it kind of depends on the particular situation, what's easier in that moment or what's easier for you. You have to know how to do it algebraically because you'll get that kind of a question on the no calculator section. And that's true for a lot of questions. So you need to know how to do it without a calculator. But that calculator is still there and still a tool that can be very helpful as an alternative means of getting to an answer. So there's a lot to talk about in these two math sections, and there's a lot of individual math topics that need to be covered and question types and all of that. And I hope to cover those in other videos. But for now, as an introduction, I hope this has been useful.